Hi everyone. The poem I'm going to be reading tonight is actually very personal and one that I don't think I've ever shown to anyone, so probably won't talk about it very much, but it's called Lunacy. Luna, so close to Earth, yet unreachable, as you are to me. And my blackened tears are like reversed stars in a white sky haunting. Your memory permeates everywhere, like the light of the moon upon my life, lacking your constant illumination and truth. I long for a new beginning, to rekindle our sisterhood, our own full moon, fresh, bright, and soothing. Once again, we could be together in our gloom. Moon and stars, astrological cycle, beautiful and guiding, together but alone. As we regard Luna across the miles as our own, sister and confidant, we're merely connected by splendor everlasting. So I wrote that poem about a very close friend of mine who I had a falling out with, and we both shared a love of the moon, and it was something that even towards the end of our friendship we talked about quite often. And I went through a process of really grieving that loss because I felt like it was my fault. And if you've never lost a friend that you've really felt close to, it's hard, I guess, to explain, but this was kind of my way of saying goodbye. That I missed her. I felt like we would always have a connection whether she wanted it or not, and that the moon, I guess, even still tied us together. And yeah, so it's kind of a sad poem, but it's very close to my heart, and it was a poem that at the time I really needed to write. It was something I really needed to feel. I needed to feel sad for losing her, and I also needed to kind of move on from that because I spent months just, trying to deal with it, I guess, and being really sad and blaming myself, but in the end, even saying sorry wasn't enough. So that's the story of that poem. And then I actually want to share a poem with you by my favorite poet, E.E. Cummings, one of my favorite poets. I, for a while, have been thinking about reading, favorite poems of mine, but I wasn't really sure, and then about a month ago, my sister and I went to see Austin Kleon, who is a author and artist, and he writes a lot of nonfiction books about sharing your work and making work constantly, art, writing, whatever you do creatively. And he did a talk and then a Q&A, and I raised my hand because something he was speaking about was getting your work out there. And so I told him about this poetry channel, and he suggested, oh, you should talk more about other poetry as well and get more people involved that way too. And since I'd been thinking about it, I figured it was a good idea at that point. So I'm starting out with a poem that I actually just found this evening by E.E. Cummings, but I really loved it. I was flipping through a poetry collection of his that I have, looking for a specific poem that I was unable to find. And I found this one, and it has to do with the moon, and so I thought it would be kind of perfect, hand in hand with this Lunacy poem that I wrote. It does not have a name. If you don't know anything about E.E. Cummings, he never titled any of his work. There are numbers for his poems, but it's really specific to the book the poem is in. So, for instance, this poem is 178, but I don't think you could type E.E. Cummings poem 178 into Google and find it. So, you generally have to search by, first line or something. Anyway, so here goes. The moon looked into my window. It touched me with its small hands, and with curling infantile fingers it understood my eyes, cheeks, mouth. Its hand slipping felt of my necktie, wandered against my shirt and into my body. The sharp things fingered tinily my heart. Life, the little hands, withdrew, jerkily themselves. Quietly they began playing with a button. The moon smiled. She let go my vest and crept through the window. She did not fall. She went creeping along the air, over houses, roofs, and out of the east toward her a fragile light bent gatheringly. So it's very short, but I liked it because it spoke more of an actual relationship with the moon. And even though obviously you're not going to have a physical relationship with the moon, I feel like, metaphorically that's what it can be like. I love the moon. The moon is a great comfort to me, and I think that poem kind of embodies what people who do feel connected to the moon feel, especially during a full moon. I love just looking at the moon and feeling her presence, and how calming it is for me to know that she is the one constant in the night sky for me. And that poem really resonated me with not only what I was reading tonight personally, but just in general. And it's just written beautifully. I love E.E. Cummings. He's crazy. In the best way. Some of his poems are like unreadable. You have to, I wouldn't be able to read it to you because you'd have to look at a picture of it. But he was a genius, and he wrote just the most beautiful poetry, some of the most poetic poetry that I've ever read. That's kind of cliched, but he's amazing. I haven't read all of his work. I have read, Edgar Allan Poe is another favorite of mine. I've read all of his work, but E.E. Cummings just created such a vast amount of work that I just hope I'll read him throughout my life and always discover something new. Like tonight, that moon poem was new, and I loved discovering it and sharing it with you. And I can't really give you a history because I actually don't know much about E.E. Cummings, but maybe if you like his poem, you'll do more research or look up more of his poetry. I own a lot of his poems, so he'll probably be a favorite in coming videos. But that is all. I think I've rambled for long enough. I hope that you all have a wonderful weekend and Mother's Day if you're a mother or you're with your mother. And I will post again soon.